Good day to the people in the good world of Tone Town. We're grateful to have you here today between Grant, Brian, and I. Today we have an excellent show for you. We're going to be talking about some pedals. We're going to be talking about a guitar legend in the great James Tyler of Tyler Guitars, arguably the most controversial Super Strat headstock ever made, but also one of the foremost godfathers of the Super Strat, which I think is goes without saying. When it comes to the world of Super Strats, we're going to get to talk about a bunch. But before we get into that today, I want to remind everybody out there that if you like this podcast, if you enjoy it and you listen to it on a weekly basis, one way that you can help us, doesn't cost you anything, is to head over to iTunes or wherever it is that you listen to this podcast and write us a review. It doesn't need to be a great review. It just needs to be an honest review. Whatever number of stars we deserve, you're going to put down. You're going to say something like, this podcast should never exist. Or, I listen to it every week. Thank you for the great advice. Or, the advice is terrible. Don't listen to these hacks. Whatever it may be, we just want honest reviews. It's the best way to help other people find this podcast or not find this podcast based on the things that you say. So we appreciate you in advance for doing that. But today I want to start with a great article that came out. And I think that as far as picks for this article, there's quite a few on here that I think are good. Guitar World has written a sort of a overarching list of their best tremolo pedals of 2024. And they've got 8 pedals listed on here. And they've kind of gone through their typical stuff, best overall, best budget, etc. And I want to take you through this list. I want to talk about tremolo pedals. I want to talk about what we like, because again, that was some feedback that we had received from some viewers just like you. And they said, hey, we really like these, best of lists, but can you make sure that you emphasize your picks so that we're able to sort of compare those? So we'll definitely make sure that we do that in the course of the chat today. But before we get into tremolos, just so that all of our listeners can kind of calibrate to where each of us are, what are your thoughts on tremolos? What are the things that you look for? What are tremolos that you're dealing with on a regular basis as it comes to rigs? Maybe we start there, Brian or Grant.
Take it away, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, tremolos, it can vary from seeing them in like the GFI synesthesia or seeing them in the Mobius from Strymon, or the H9, H90. You'll get a lot of those. Like if you see more multi-pedal, like multi-effect units, and like the Strifector or Threple, whatever we called it, when you start seeing those, I'm mostly finding in those sounds. It is very rarely that I get the Boss Tremolo or like the Monument Tremolo from Walrus and those ones just by themselves. Typically it's on like almost non-switching rigs just because people want easy access. So there was a few like the Flint, the Mobius, the H9, H90, and all of those ones. I would say those are probably the staple ones I see. You can throw it back to some older school ones, but it really depends on the rig.
I would tend to agree. I think the ones that I see most commonly now, if I was doing a rig build, I do probably see a bit more of the TR2, the Boss one, whether that's modded or not. But I think by and large, if I could speak for the customers that I generally kind of work with, tremolo is a little bit more of a afterthought. It's not typically a pedal that people are seeking out, actively for the best possible tremolo sound. Which, I mean, I always used to joke with the one of the original owners of the company of Goodwood Audio. He loved tremolo. Like it seemed like it was all he'd chat about. I'm like, man, just move your volume pedal up and down. Done. Like, move on. And obviously, it's a little tongue in cheek. But then I would hear someone like Joey Landreth use tremolo, And like, that is the most musical sound. And I think it's like anything. You take the tremolo effect and you put it in the hands of someone like me, and it sounds like I'm, hacking up a $2 steak. But then you give it to someone like Joey, or someone that really understands the purpose behind it and how to use it musically, and it just transforms the sound. And I think potentially a lot of the customers that I deal with are probably more on my side of the fence of, how do you actually use it really creatively and musically and to add a little bit of movement. And so I think that's why for the boards that me and Brian are probably building these days, it ends up as more of a multi-effect. It's there if I need it, but I'll probably never touch it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Rather than putting in like this nice harmonic tremolo that's adding these extra nuances and subtleties to the sound. And so I think if I was to speak for myself, I'm probably using tremolo from a place more of ignorance rather than how it might have originally been intended. And so the pedals that I see reflect that. But I will say I have it up on my screen, a couple of the more popular ones. TR2 is absolutely up there. But the Keeley Hydra, it has been a way to get tremolo on a board with a less intense multi-effect unit. And the trems on there sound quite nice. And so I think that's a bit of my rambling way of saying that tremolos do show up, but they're not as much of a focus as
comparatively to the former owner or former co-owner of
exactly, where there's just one whole pedal board of tremolo.
He's a tremolo.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Mason.
Can't
Thank
be
you
without
for
it.
putting it in a way that I just couldn't quite find. Yes.
Right. You can hit him up later today and let him know. So you found the perfect word to describe it. That could be one of our T-shirts where we just have all these tremolo pedals, Fender tremolo.
Yeah.
Or just all the tremolos, harmonic, trem, and bias, and all that. I'm an evangelist of the Boss TR2, whether it's in stock form or whether it is in modded form from people like Analog Man, Robert Keeley, or Exact Tone. I think has probably the slickest mod to the TR2 in that they even allow for a momentary option where it's similar to the Boss Vibrato, where it will, you can latch, hold it down, you get a tremolo effect, and then you let it go and it's gone. And so that's what I have on my Nashville inspired pedal board, which you can find a video of if you're interested on the YouTube channel. And I love that pedal. And I'll say this, there are not many analog tremolos left in the world. It is an endangered species in the pedal world. And the Boss Tremolo is one of the best designs of an analog tremolo in a pedal format that I have come across. Others that I really like, the Empress, which is not, I think that is digital, but they are Canadian, so that they get the nod from Grant on that. Also Canadian, Diamond makes a very good tremolo. I don't know whether that's still in production, but their original sort of like Hammond 1590 BB horizontally oriented box that was kind of a dark green. Yep.
Yeah.
And it had an on and off in tremolo, or had on and off in a tap tempo. That was very nice. I think that might have been analog.
Now it's in a 1590B, their new version.
Okay, but it probably doesn't have tap tempo, or does it have tap tempo?
There's two switches. It does have tap. It looks like each switch is multi-purpose, so I think you can kind of decide what you want. God
bless. All right. Yep. So that one, excellent. And there's another one that is. I'm going to take people back now to the 2000s. If you remember this pedal, it was called the BFD. It stood for Black Face Deluxe, and I don't know what the pedal company's name was. I apologize to them in advance. If anybody knows who they are,
Vintage Technology.
Maybe it was, but I know that Bad Cat at the time, I believe under Mark Sampson's direction, was doing the manufacturing of it. I think he might have actually worked for Bad Cat, the guy that was doing it. But anyway, It was a very simple tremolo. I think it was 2 controls. I think the early ones only worked off a battery. That was a very good tremolo. So in any case, a couple of options there. I'm definitely an enthusiast of the analog tremolo. I love using them on pedal boards. I'll tell you another sleeper one that I really like that's cool. Robert Bradshaw has this company called Custom Audio Electronics, and there is a division that exists in Japan called Custom Audio Japan. And they did a pedal version of the half space rack tremolo that Bradshaw used to put on a lot of people's rack rigs back in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, nice.
I think more the 90s than 80s. But anyway, and I have one of those on a rig, which is basically a 2-speed tremolo. So you have like an on-off, and then you have like an A and a B, and you can separately set the depth and the speed of each channel and then select between them. And then you can also select the kind of the waveform. And I thought that's a really hip, cool tremolo as well. It sounds really good. And I don't know, I don't think I paid very much for it. I think I found it on Reverb. I'm sure it was under $200. But that's really cool. And then another one, last one, this is also kind of a sleeper one going back to the 2010s, is Rocket, when they had their kind of older enclosure sizes that were kind of more, I don't know, rounded and taller. Josh Smith had a signature tremolo called the Josh Smith Dual Tremolo. And it was had a white top, had 2 foot switches, and similarly, you had 2 independent channels of tremolo and volume. And it was a really nice sounding, beautiful tremolo. I was actually reminded of it the other day because we're prepping for a Guitarist Behind interview with Mark Lettieri. And early on in Mark Lettieri's career, he was doing demo videos for Rocket wearing a Gumby suit. And the Josh Smith tremolo was what he used on that demo. I don't know if it was for the tone or just, style over function. But he did, in fact, wear one. So if you search the archives of Rocket Pedal's YouTube channel, you can find Mark Lettieri wearing a Gumby suit and a Strat demoing the Josh Smith tremolo. All right. So some good recommendations straight out of the bat, right off the bat, I should say. And let's get in though to guitar players' recommendations. So the first thing that they got there, I think that they're starting strong. They got the Strymon Flint. Now, absolutely. I think that this has certainly separated itself as being one of the premier effects, not only for tremolo but also for reverb. So you got a 2-in-1. But
they're showing the V1, aren't they? Isn't the black knob the V1 and the cream knob V2?
I think that they had done a run with black knobs because they ran out of the cream ones.
Yeah, because I'm looking at this Flint, I'm like, this doesn't look right. Something's different. And okay.
Yeah, so I think they had a run where either the knobs were not to their standard, and so they had to pivot to something else, or they couldn't get the color knobs that they wanted, the cream ones, and so they pivoted. But I think that this is still a recent incarnation.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the link takes you to a V2 anyway.
Yeah, link takes you to V2. But I think whether you're saying V1 or V2,
for sure.
They stand out on their own as one of the best in the industry. You got guys like John Mayer using these and have been using them for quite a long time. And the list of artists that use them is lengthy. I think that this is a really great pick, and again, you're basically getting 2 pedals for the price of one here. The reverb is excellent as well. I don't have any qualms about this pick. What do you say, gentlemen?
I have no qualms.
Well, according to the article, if you don't like vintage tones, you might want to avoid this pedal.
Ooh.
So anyone out there who doesn't like where the guitar started and where it came from, please avoid.
Yeah, if you're allergic to vintage,
I think that's a pretty funny reason to avoid. I mean, I would. I mean, tremolo is it's an older effect, but even on the face of the pedal, you can choose. Was it 60s, 70s, and 80s style reverbs, harmonic, analog? Like, there's a lot of options. So I would disagree with the reasons to avoid. I would say, this pedal is. It, in my mind, has a bit of a cult following. from what I hear of people that use it. And once you use it and fall in love with it, you just stop looking for other options for this category of pedals. It does a great job.
Unless you're a boomer, right? They've those youths. It's the boomer reverb.
Never
tremolo.
satisfied. Yeah,
right.
Never satisfied.
I feel like it's overused. People just say boomer to anything now. They don't even really know what decade that means.
Yeah.
Oh, always.
It's just a pejorative, that they just throw around. Like you're into this boomer stuff.
Yep.
Or they'll just be like, okay, boomer. I'm like, what is that? What that doesn't even
explain this
doesn't
to
even
me.
work. Just
maybe
tell
they're
me what you
talking
mean.
about football legend Boomer Esiason. Maybe that's who they mean. They're old Cincinnati Bengals or Jets fans.
Maybe. I will say this is like probably one of my favorite Strymon pedals. Like I like the big box ones, and I've always said it. I was like, when the Flint comes out with MIDI, like I'll get the Flint, which I did as soon as it came out with MIDI. But I've had I love it. I mean, it's fantastic. It's probably one of my favorite 2-in-1 type pedals. I really like the reverb. I'm very much a Hall reverb. So the fact that there's like that type of a reverb in this pedal mixed with the tremolo. I don't use the tremolo a lot. I also use the quad cortex a lot now too, which is ironic because I almost never use chorus or tremolo or stuff, but there's some of my favorite sounds. But for a number one spot, the Flint I think is awesome. I have a couple of them going on boards. Yeah, they did good. The reasons to avoid is a little silly, but that's just.
Well, I think that because you have to stretch, you have to reach on that one. You can't very easily come up with reasons that it's bad. I mean, I think the only thing that you could say is that it's expensive. But if you consider that you're getting, in essence, two different effects that are of the highest quality in one self-contained box. Now, I know that some people hate it. I heard Tom Bukovac say that he didn't like the Flint. So there are its detractors, but also the place he's coming from is also like analog reverb tanks that he's using, and so I could understand that if that is your comparison point, pedal is going to measure up. But I think I think Tom Bukovac has great tone. I think John Mayer's got great tone. John Mayer seems to love this thing, and it's on a lot of rigs, and so it can be made to sound good. I want to get into the second pick, but before we do, want to break for a moment to talk about some of the sponsors that make today's podcast possible. Without them, we wouldn't be speaking to you. So I'd love to hear about them if you would.
Absolutely, yes. The first of our sponsors is going to be the guys over at the Guitar Sanctuary, as we always talk about. They have all the most top-notch guitars and amps and pedals, tremolo pedals, as we've been talking about today. And you can go check them out in McKinney, Texas. Go to guitarsanctuary.com or visit them online in the store. Give them a call, shoot them a text. They can help get you what you need, help you get pretty much any of these tremolos that we're going to be talking about today, and they can ship it out same day for you. So give them a call. You won't regret it. The staff there is incredible, and you'll be super happy with your purchase. And then the next sponsor is going to be our friends with Neural DSP. As I just talked about, I am an avid user of the Quad Cortex, and we all are, Mason and Grant. We all love the Quad Cortex and their plug-in capability that they have on the computer, the Core OS update, the Cortex Control app. It's just all around such an easy system to use and to program and have consistent tone. I've set up, I think, 6 Quad Cortex rigs in the past couple weeks, just because it's becoming such a current thing with touring bands and stuff using. So if you're looking for some consistency, easy flow, go check them out. Use the discount code Chairmen, CHARMEN, for 30% off their plugins after 90 days. So if you go to get a plugin and the code doesn't work, just wait until it's past 90 and then you'll be set. But you don't have to wait until 90 to purchase what they have now and then upload those plugins to the Quad Cortex with their newest update. So go check them out, neuraldsp.com. I'll throw it back to you, Mason.
All right, so we got the best overall being the Flint. Let's move to what they call the best budget choice, which is the TC Electronics Choka. Not sure how they came up with that name.
It might be a soft
Choka?
C.
Choka?
Choka?
Choka? Choka.
Choke.
Not sure, what they're referencing there.
Maybe it's from Shaka Khan. Choka.
Right. Big tremolo user, that Choka.
It'll shaka you.
Or it'll choka your tone. Or choka your volume. Maybe that's what it is. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Choka is more of a, reverbed out drums, that sort of thing. Especially in the 80s. But we feel for you. If anybody got that reference there, Choka Khan. But I've never heard of this. I can't speak to it.
I've never had it on a build. I've never seen or played it in person. So I also can't speak to it.
Do you guys have any sense, like if we're just talking about budget tremolos generally, are there any that you can think of? I mean, usually my thought is get a stock Boss TR2, especially if you go on the used market. I have to think that you would struggle to pay more than $100. Does anybody want to pull up Reverb real quick and just see like what does a used TR2 go for? I'll enable the screen sharing here for those who are watching on YouTube, but I have to think a stock used TR2.
They're like 69, 60, 60, 68. The highest is like 92. I mean, yeah.
All right, 69. Buy now. No problem. All under $100, right?
Buy it now.
And you could probably I'm sure you could find a modded one. And to be clear, I think the main purpose of the mod for the TR2 is to correct a volume issue. Is that right?
Yeah, it's to correct the volume issue because when you're because the tremolo is dealing with volume, or at least the style of this particular tremolo, that when the perception of the output changes if the depth gets too high. And so when we talked to Danny Underwood some time ago, which is a podcast you can reference, he works with Boss. He said they corrected it, and I think that probably what they did is they just set the output higher so that when the depth was higher, that it was still usable. I still think that there's going to be settings where where there's a perceived drop in volume. So I would say it's still valuable to have the mod where you're adding the volume control, so you can in essence adjust the output level to taste based on your exact settings of rate and depth. I think that that's just a no-brainer. And I think that and I told Danny, and I'll say this to you all, this is the most worthwhile pedal, in my opinion, for Boss to WAZA. And if you don't know what WAZA is, it's sort of like an addition of existing Boss pedals that they sort of elevate to a boutique level where they include all these mods and improve some of the component tolerances and things like that to just make it an even better. And it's made in Japan as opposed to Taiwan as the ordinary Boss pedals would be made in. And so I really love the TR2. I really wish they would do a WAZA. Hopefully that's in the works. Danny, if you're listening, or if anybody at Boss is listening, or Mom, if you're listening, we need a WAZA the TR2. That is it. That is a must, because I feel like maybe it's not as affordable as this TC option. I have to think. I kind of remember option, this. I'm
on Reverb right now. It's like quite a few are selling for $30, $35.
Some people will give you $35 to take it.
Yeah.
It's
speaking from no experience, but spend another $20 and get a TR2 and know that you're
there's one on Craigslist
awesome.
Right now. This guy will give you a $30 Chili's gift card plus this if you just take it.
Yes.
Free so you can get yourself some wings, have a beer or two. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the add-on to the WAZA TR2, if they do it, if they add like a tap tempo / expression jack, would be really handy too, because like the JHS Kodiak has that one, which is like their fuller size tremolo, and a couple other, the Monument has it, and I see people that will sync it up with like a quartz clock or something, which is really handy, and it just allows you, like if you have a MIDI controller you don't have to bend down. You can let it send BPM and stuff, which would be really cool. So yeah, if they do a WAZA, that would be cool. Because I've always been I understand why it's not a thing, why the original one isn't, but I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something.
Are you on that point though? I mean, again, going back to people I listen to that use Trem,
yeah,
versus people that use Trem like I would use Trem. I love everything synced up to time and all that.
Yeah,
but the people that I listen to that use Trem, and I'm like, man, that sounds so good. They are never synced up. They are always using it as background movement, and it just sounds beautiful. And I've asked a couple guys, I think Ariel and Landreth being two of them, doing a board build for Ariel in particular, like, do you want your Trem synced up? He's like, no, absolutely not. I would never sync up my Trem. Same with some analog delay sounds. Like, it's just, you do not sync up some of these sounds according to them. Yeah. And I listen to their playing, and I never think about that when I'm listening to their playing. Like, oh yeah, Trem's not synced. I listen to their playing, like, this sounds incredible. Yeah. And I'm just curious, and not saying that syncing tap tempo or syncing Trem.
You need that Sean Bean meme, one never syncs tremolo.
Exactly.
Or analog delay.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I don't disagree that I think it's a handy feature, but I'd almost be curious to say, like, maybe instead of tap, would it be more useful to have just an expression where you can control speed and do some ramping stuff? But either way, it's a total side.
Yeah. No, I agree completely.
It actually just made me think of another tremolo, not that necessarily is budget, although I don't know, you could check Reverb and see what they are. I got an excellent tremolo for you. Speaking of non-synchronized tremolo, the other night I saw Oz Noy, who's an amazing guitar player, and he uses tremolo as almost like an emphasis effect, where he'll step on it for one note and use it like as a chop, to like do something to emphasize a certain thing, and then pull it out. So like it'll come on for like one note or two notes, and that's it. And it's just like to kind of like disrupt. And he uses a fantastic tremolo called the Demeter Tremulator. Demeter Tremulator. It's made by James Demeter.
I always said Demeter, but it's Demeter.
Demeter. Yeah. Well, you see meter in there, and, depending on how you learn phonics,
anywhere from 140, old one for 100, up to 400.
Yeah. Well, there are like various incarnations. There's like stereo versions, but this the classic mono.
It looks like you could get one for 150 up to maybe 200.
If you can find one that has red knobs, that's like the Rycooter Special. Those are real good. Yeah. But I think that they're principally the same, but they are excellent analog tremolos. They are fully analog. James Demeter is kind of one of the OGs of the scene in LA. I think now he lives in, or his operations are kind of out of the Central California wine country. I think he's in kind of Paso Robles or like Templeton or somewhere in that range. They're kind of around San Luis Obispo.
Interesting.
And
looks like he does a stereo version as well.
He does a stereo version, also analog. He's kind of like, he's made some really interesting stuff. He's had some really cool preamps that he's done, and amplifiers and studio gear, and he designed in fact, that we're going to talk about James Tyler a little later. He designed the preamp that's in all the James Tyler guitars. He was the impetus for the Clapton mid-boost preamp that is in all the Clapton guitars, that TBX circuit. He designed when he was working for Carruthers in the 80s, doing all these, mods to guitars and stuff like that. So anyway,
that's cool.
Real legend. But let's move on to the next pick. I don't know if I have like a great recommendation as far as like super budget, other than just getting a TR2 and buying it used. As Brian said, you can get it for $69. All right. Best analog. Now, I disagree with this. I'm not saying this is a bad pedal, but the JHS pedals Tidewater, a fan favorite from the Kansas City crew. I don't know if they've been identified as that on their own, or whether they're just called that now. But the JHS, I've actually had one of these because I needed I thought I needed a really small and compact tremolo, and I couldn't fit any of the other options that we talked about. And I thought there was absolutely nothing wrong with this. It's compact, it's small, it's got a few controls here. No objections to this. I just think that if I were going for just best sounding, to me, I still prefer the Boss, the Diamond, the Demeter. But this is great. Like if I needed small and I wanted analog, there it is. No.
135 brand new. You can get it for under 100 on Reverb.
Under $100.
Hey, yeah. And I mean, if you think about it, it's the size of a Polytune, like Polytune Mini. Like it's right. It's tiny.
It's little. Now that's not everything.
Little.
Because once you put jacks on it, and this has jacks on 3 sides, it's roughly going to be the same space as a 1590 with top jacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Roughly. I mean, it's going to be slightly smaller, but depending on where your space allowances are, which generally left to right is more at a premium than front to back. It's a generalization, but
yeah.
Generalization for a reason, because it's mostly true, that this doesn't really help you. But there can be situations where, and Grant, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. When you're doing a switcher rig, sometimes these can be a little bit more helpful because you can sort of orient them in ways that would be non-traditional, because you don't need access to it anymore. So you can kind of cram it in spaces where it shouldn't normally go. I didn't mean that to sound like innuendo.
Hey,
but,
you spoke the truth, man. Just own it. Yep.
Don't cram your tremolo in spaces you wouldn't ordinarily.
No, 100%. And I think with these, if you needed a tremolo, you wanted a standalone, like one of the things we've chatted about before on the show, and even on my own socials, is how your layout doesn't need to follow your signal chain. And so I think if you have a tiny pedal like this, you can potentially find a gap on your pedal board where the jacks do slot into this maybe smaller spot. And you might be able to get this pedal in there and where it wouldn't normally go, in the words of Mason. And I think if you have no objections, I think I've seen this maybe on 1 or 2 boards ever that I've done. So I don't have a ton of experience with it, but I mean, if you just want that tremolo effect in a small form factor, JHS is a trusted brand. Mason doesn't have any issues with it from your experience.
The only thing is the Tidewater. They're in a landlocked city, so there's no tide.
Can you really trust the name?
Can you try? It's like getting sushi in a landlocked city. You got to be careful. You don't want to have
certain
any
things you should avoid.
Rainbow trout, sashimi.
Yeah, but no, I think it could work. It could work.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this come through on a couple boards, but I've never seen I've never really seen it on switchers. It's not, it's not the most popular pedal. It's a great pedal. It sounds great. It's very compact. If you need something small, obviously it tells you reasons to avoid is that you have to access the dip switches to get to some more features, which I think isn't inside. Probably, I don't really know. It's like the exotic EP booster or whatever it is, the EP booster where those have like dip switches inside. And it's like I've never opened it.
Yeah, there's no dip switches on the side of this pedal.
Yeah, so it's inside.
But even if it were though, once it's on the board, it's like hard to get to it anyway. I don't know if it's that big of an issue.
That's like where like Kinglsey, what they did really good on is they updated all of their pedals with anything with dip switches. They put them on the side, on the outside, so you can actually get to, which is smart. It just like it doesn't hinder you. Like that's my big like getting like a pedal that has split loops, like the Protein or something, and you have to take off the bottom because you installed it on your board. You put the dual lock on there, and then you're like, oh shoot, I gotta hit those dip switches. You have to take it off. You gotta open it up. So the same thing will apply to this. Is if you want to mess with the settings, but for the price it is and for the size it is, it's still a really great pedal. And JHS, they make really good stuff. So I still like it. I've never owned it, but I have played on it.
I just like it where it says bypass true.
Ooh,
not a lie.
Yeah. True or false. This is not bypass false bypass.
Pedal. Yep.
I love that. All right. So next one, and this is under Best Harmonic. Speaking of old Ariel Posen, shout out Ariel if you're not listening or listening. Walrus Audio Monument V2. I don't know what V he's on, but he's definitely a user of this pedal. I've seen it on his board recently.
Victory.
I have more experience with this one on the V1. I don't know if there's a huge difference between V1 and V2, but I do remember plugging it in and enjoying it. It was one of those times where I sat down. I think I don't know, got it in on a trade or something, sat down to make sure it worked, and I ended up playing guitar for longer than expected. And I think that's always a good sign when you plug in a pedal. So I mean, I think Walrus makes some great stuff. I expect their pedals in general, I don't know if this is fair or not, to do a good job. I expect to enjoy them. I don't usually expect to be like, man, this is a new take on it. I'm blown away by their creative direction on this. But this pedal, I sat down, I was inspired to keep playing. And so for the V1, I can say that. A V2, I would expect to be the same with just a couple of extra features.
I think the V2 is also a different enclosure because it was like that, like King of Tone enclosure.
The bigger,
right?
the BB.
The bigger one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now this is like the Morning Glory, which is what, a 1590B?
Yeah. It might be 125.
Yeah, different number. I think.
125, yeah.
Just a little bit bigger.
Like a little higher and a little
Morning
wider.
Glory, yeah.
Well, and the one thing, like, I have people all the time, like, I love top jack pedals. Like, it just makes sense for a lot of pedals. It's when you get the ones where they do like the power on the side, or they do the,
or this one is an expression on the side.
It's an expression tap on the side.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I'm okay
and like
with
for
that,
me,
though.
it's fine, but like I understand because I've opened up the inside before and it's really tight. You know, if this was
there's no way they could put. There's no way they could put it on the back. There's no way.
Vertex figured it out.
Well, I'm saying like.
People
that's
hate
what I'm
that.
saying.
People get mad at me though on that.
Really?
One. Yeah,
it doesn't make
there's
sense.
a lot of pervs out there that don't like
So
the 1/8
stupid.
inch. They didn't. The 1/4 inch was too big and 1/8 inch is too small. So we're gonna have
it's
to
about
go.
size.
Get a custom cable made by any one of us, and we'll make you the 1/8 inch cable. You're done. You're finished.
Is this because they just don't like the little? They just don't like the little plug. They want a big plug.
A big boy plug.
I think that it's becoming more palatable as we're seeing more and more people or brands for pedals kind of do this for 1/8 inch for MIDI and 1/8 inch for expression and all that stuff. But you know, this came out more than 2 years ago now.
That's true.
The Mark II, and there wasn't as much 1/8 inch usage, and the only reason why we did it is because it was the only way to consolidate the width of the enclosure, because the enclosure was dictated by the fact that we had 3 1/4 inch jacks and a DC.
Yeah,
there's just no way to close that unless you start to remove and even just getting it where the 1/8 inch fits. And for servicing standpoints, there's kind of like 2 demarcations on our Mark II. Like one of them has the jack on a PCB, and then I think for the first 1,000. And we just couldn't consistently get good results from those 1/8 inch jacks, even though it was chassis mounted. It was mounted to a PCB, and the jacks were just unreliable. Like we'd get a batch that'd be great, and then we'd get a batch that would be garbage. And it was mostly just it would short to itself, and so you just would turn the pedal just wouldn't go on because it would short the audio signal because it would just short the whole jack. And so we started going to just a full chassis wire, Switchcraft 1/8 inch, and then that took care of it all. But because Switchcraft is just like so rock solid, it's just like just forget about it. Not gonna have any issues. That's gonna last forever.
It's the Boss standard enclosure of the jack world. Just
right,
breaks.
Right, yeah, but yeah, I think that it's I guess they could have done it, but I don't know. I feel
what
like
about
most
RCA? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. What about like an RCA? Is
well,
that
the
not
problem
typical?
with that is you need two of them because it's TRS, right? So an RCA jack is just
it's
mono.
TS. Yeah, that's
And
true.
they're a
I
little
forgot.
bulky.
Think about that.
They're a little bulky on all fronts as well.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I was thinking like
Remember,
the Cusack stuff.
Cusack did RCA, and that like the jack, just the RCA jack mounted to the pedal stuck out.
Yeah, it was stuck out.
What, like, I don't know, a third of an inch maybe? Like it takes up a lot of space even when not using it.
You know, he took a risk. You know,
He did.
You got to sometimes do that to find out. But yeah, I think this is a cool pedal. I think it sounds really interesting. I think it's unique. It's got the pedigree of Ariel Posen behind it, and he gets some great tremolo tones. I don't want to speak for him. Maybe a tremolo ho. We don't know. A tremolo ho.
Tremolo.
But he uses a lot of tremolo and gets some amazing tones. I have nothing bad to say about this one. Let's go to the next one on the list here.
I have a problem.
This
with
is
the
best
next one.
compact. Now, why didn't the JHS go here? This I think would be an obvious choice for best compact. I don't know if this is analog or not, but I don't know. I mean, I didn't even know that Ibanez made a tremolo until just now.
I have one big issue with this. Again, open to critique. I love it when we disagree on this show. But as a non-Tremoho, so I might not even be the right person to make a comment here. But for people that are listening, it's a small pedal, like Brian said before, kind of roughly the size of a TC Mini tuner, Polytune.
Yep.
They have two tiny knobs, like micro knobs. I can't remember what those are called.
Trimmer, kind of
like trim pot size. Yeah. And then one big one that you could possibly turn with your foot if you're a little dexterous in the ankle. But the knob that they chose to be easily changeable on the fly while you're playing with your foot is depth. And for the life of
speed.
me, I cannot figure out why they wouldn't do speed. Like, why did you choose depth over speed?
Yeah.
And so that drives me a little bit crazy seeing this pedal.
Yeah.
It might sound amazing, and I'm not the guy to put a bunch of tremolo on his board, but it just seems like a bit of an oversight that you do that.
Yeah. I wonder if somebody was just asleep at the wheel on that one, because that would seem like a pretty obvious choice too.
Yeah.
That's my problem. I don't have experience with this pedal. It might be an absolute sleeper. It might be incredible, but
maybe
I'm not going to buy it because of that.
All right, well, that's two strikes, Ibanez. You forgot the Enye, and you didn't put the speed on the big knob.
Yeah, it should have been. Yeah, no, I've never seen or heard of this pedal. It's ironic though to see like where today's best deals, and like Walmart is one of the places you can buy it from, because it makes me want to go to Walmart even though they don't have them in store.
Yeah,
but
they might. You can go there, get your Go-Gurts and for the kids.
Go get some Go-Gurts. Grab a Taylor Swift little guitar and get a tremolo from Ibanez. But no, I mean best tremolo, mini tremolo. Yeah, I agree. I think this would have been a better spot for the for that JHS pedal. I know that they make like a mini tube screamer in this enclosure.
Yeah, I have one.
But I've never seen it in a tremolo. I've never even seen
also
the store someone.
It is analog.
This one is analog, made in Japan. Mini trim pot, I think, inside for level adjust.
Oh man.
So this may be a really nice pedal.
This is the dark horse of the list.
How
long has it been out?
I'm curious.
It's got to be years.
I
think 5 years at least. I mean, probably around the time that the mini tube screamer came out, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And you can get it brand new for $100 on Re-Verb.
Wow.
I started out hating it. I'm slowly warming up, but the knob thing still drives me nuts.
Well, Grant, as a I don't know what the pot. What's that?
Sorry, it just came out March 20th of last year.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
right near my birthday. Well, Grant, as a professional, if the pots are the same value, you could probably reassign. I mean, or even if they're not the same value, you could probably make a few little changes. Those look very close to the Alpha 9mm trim pots.
Yeah, might be doable.
So
MIDI mod.
Yeah, MIDI mod. Yeah, it's gonna have like an external like MIDI mod like enclosure.
Yeah, it would have to be. There's no way you're fitting a MIDI mod in that thing.
I used to do these MIDI mods to a lot of the EHX pedals, like the POG and stuff. But then they came out with this M9 series, or this 9 series they called it, where it was like I kid you not, it was literally the size of the pedal, and it would go on top of the pedal as an external source, and you would then feed all 14 wires through the foot switch and wire them to the board.
Or micro design them, right?
Micro design, and they make great stuff. But that one, I had multiple people get it, and I was just like, this is really rough looking. Like it just looked like a giant Big Mac of pedals.
Well, that's not a downside for me. You got me there.
Yeah. I don't know, but they never look as good. You know, when you get a Big Mac in store, you see it on the
great.
The pictures are great.
Oh, dude! Next time you guys come, we got to do the real Big Mac. We've done some, you know, because the secret sauce from McDonald's has been leaked.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I might need you to leak it my way.
At least according to YouTube, it's been leaked.
Drip it.
But we'll do it with the Wagyu, beef.
I'm hopping on a plane right after the show.
You know, chop up that iceberg lettuce, get the special sauce, some dill pickle. You can do the sesame seed bun. So we've done some where we've made it like, but like legit stuff, not I don't know if those burgers were ever burgers, but using it with the Wagyu is pretty special.
Man, you came here for the chat on Tremolo. You're leaving with a Big Mac recipe to die for.
Yeah, head over to YouTube. I mean, I don't think it's anything like groundbreaking. It's kind of like a standard sort of special sauce recipe, but whatever. Next, best for simplicity. I mean, some of these seem to have a lot of overlap. We've already talked about the TR2 ad nauseum. Great pedal, deserving of a WAZA craft. Boss, make it happen. I don't know that there's anything more to say. Anything you want to say about the TR2 other than just going out and buy one?
No, it's a good pedal.
No, buy it.
But before we go to what was that?
I was saying buy it today. Go to Facebook Marketplace or something.
Go to Facebook Marketplace. Go to Craigslist. Go to Reverb. Go to Sweetwater Gear Exchange. There are all places that you could go and find this. Before we go to our last 2 picks on the list, I would like to toss it over to Grant to talk about 2 more sponsors that make it possible for us to talk to you about tremolos today. Grant, take it away.
Thank you. So the first sponsor I want to tell you guys about is one I talk about often, Mono Creators. If you need a soft bag for your guitar, your pedal board, or you need a actual pedal board surface, power supply, accessories, Mono, in my mind, is synonymous with a quality piece of gear that is going to last for years. And that started my Mono journey. Started with, I think, one of their larger pedal board soft bags, and the thing just would not die. It just kept going. And so you might spend a tiny bit more up front, but man, the thing will just keep on going and keep serving you well. So check out monocreators.com. Use the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, for 10% off your double gig bag, your soft bag, your pedal board surface, accessories, power supplies that are slim and don't take up too much room, and you will not be disappointed. Chairmen for 10% off at monocreators.com. I also want to tell you guys about BTPA, also known as Bestronix, also known as the Rig Builders Disneyland. You can chat to Brad, ask him for some part numbers or accessories, bulk cable, plugs, square plugs. I know Mason goes there quite a bit for the square plugs. Even if you just want to go on their Instagram and see I think this past week, they posted a rig, some rig shots.
You want to go see Brad mount a bunch of power supplies?
There you go.
Get over to their Instagram.
That's what you want to do.
Field trip.
This past week, they posted, it was something like 8 or 9 identical quad Cortex rigs.
Yes.
And they just have all the parts there to build it, whether it's going in a rack or on a pedal board. So Brad is probably one of the most helpful guys around, and he will get you the parts you need to finish your pedal board build. Use the code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, and you'll get 10% off. I also we used to build looms and snakes, and I stopped doing it because it's an incredible amount of effort to build one well. And so I had a customer ask me this week, hey, do you guys do looms? Like, I don't do them anymore. Go chat to Brad. I'm sure he'll be able to help you out. So even if you need some obscure stuff, they'll be able to help you out at BTPA. Use the code DUTCHAIRS, DACHAIRS, one more time for 10% off, and tell them the chairman sent you.
Yeah, Brad
Mason,
is
I'm going to toss
expert,
this ad break right
he's
back
an
at
expert snake handler, I'll say that.
The loom whisperer. Yeah.
I feel like that needs to be a trip. I feel like we need to go to
It would be a lot of
Vestronics
fun.
now, because
That would be a lot of fun.
you said it's the Disneyland for musicians, which you got me. Like, that sounds great.
Or rig
Right?
builders.
It's a good hook.
What's the Splash Mountain of BTPA? Well, you should ask Brad.
Yeah, we'll have to do it. Probably the life-size rack unit that they have where you can take your lunch break, and you know, it's big enough to fit a table and a coffee machine in there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the last two picks. So their next pick, under more options, they have the Fender Tre-Verb. Tre-Verb, I guess it's some sort of multi. I guess it's like to compete with the Flint. It's tremolo and reverb. I feel like I've seen this pedal before.
The Flint? Just kidding.
Yeah, I've seen the Flint before. I feel like I've seen this thing before, kind of when they first launched them. I think actually all these pedals in this series from Fender are pretty good, especially comparatively to other eras of Fender pedals that had come out in the past. I think that this is certainly one of their better feet forward as far as the quality of the designs, the sounds, etc. I don't know that I see it much from other people. I think that Fender kind of doesn't invest a lot of money in the pedal and power supply accessory side of things. But some of these are cool. I don't know that I like. I don't know if I hate this as an option, but you know. It exists. I think it's an alternative for maybe somebody that doesn't have a budget for a Flint and wants to have tremolo and reverb in one box. Anything remarkable to add to that, Grant or Brian?
I think one of the things that this has going for it, depending similarly to the Flint, is and this hasn't come up on other pedals as much today, is that it is fully stereo. You don't need any specialty cables to wire it up, as in there's no TRS input for stereo.
Right.
It's left and right in, left and right out. What else does it have here? There was...
You can loop you can change if it's reverb in the trem or trem in the reverb.
See, that I like. And that's what I know I've probably made you guys sick with how much I love it.
Though?
I think the Flint can do it as a sub-menu option.
Okay. Is it a sub-menu?
I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, listeners. But I think that being able to flip tremolo to after reverb and chop up your reverb sound quite aggressively is a really cool sound. But then to be able to make it more subtle again by flipping them the other way, I think that's an underrated signal chain hack to have at your disposal. I think that's quite cool. So, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen this on a build, but I agree that the Fender pedals that I have seen, I was skeptical of because it just seemed like, Fender chucked out a bunch of pedals haphazardly and here we are. But I've always enjoyed playing the Fender pedals. And so that's where I think I may have judged them a bit too quickly. And they are a company with the scale to put out these pedals for a fair price. And I think that's another thing to consider as well. They're going to do a good job. They won't have the pedigree in the pedal market that other companies do, but I have so far been quite impressed by what they have put out with the pedal side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't put this one. I've had, I think, maybe one of them come through for a setup, but I put this line of pedals on a couple boards, the Smolder acoustic one that they have, and a couple of their other ones.
Such an interesting name for acoustic. Nobody ever really talks about it. You got a smoldering acoustic tone.
Yeah. Oh, I understand. No, I remember when the rep came to the Guitar Sanctuary the first time. What's ironic about it is the very first thing he said and showed us was not any of the features. It was literally the battery compartment on the front, like how it flips down. Because if if you look at it, it just like flips down, which is really interesting. And it was a smart design because then you don't have to pop it up and open it up. But I thought that was a very interesting first thing to show, which was cool. But I will say, like, the foot switches are very robust feeling. Like, it's a louder click. They're not soft touch switches, but I've never opened one up. But I will say they're pretty durable for the size and stuff. Obviously, their enclosure is like a custom bent thing. But yeah, no, it's I think it's cool. It's definitely a more budget friendly. You don't need all those bells and whistles, and sometimes that's fine. I think that's great for some of the stuff. Like looking at it on Amazon, I'm just like looking at the jacks. I love the fact that you don't have to have a TRS cable for the input or anything. It's just left and right in, left and right out, the foot switches. Like it's all very basic. If you were starting out as a guitarist and you wanted a tremolo reverb pedal, this would be a great option. I really do think so. If you're trying to have a switching system and do all this, maybe this is not the option for you if you want to access both sides from the switcher. But if that's not what you're trying to do right now, then I think this is great.
And you can turn the knob LEDs on or off with a switch.
And you can see it. You can see it
if
on
you have
the stage.
sensitive eyes, flip that thing off. You're good.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll also say one cool effect that is from this series that I think sounds really good is they have a rotary pedal called the pinwheel.
Yeah.
And that is a really good rotary pedal. I think it sounds fantastic, and I was very impressed with it of anything in the series. So let's look at the very last recommendation, which is the Electro-Harmonix Nano Pulsar. I have no experience with this pedal. I have nothing to say. Brian or Grant, take it away.
Well, EHX has they put out some pedals. They know how to make a pedal. There's some knobs on here. There's a jack.
I love that. It's like most kids, Grant was born. We're just saying this.
I've had a few birthdays, time moves on. I also have zero experience with this pedal. I'm trying to look up, some might say frantically, some specs online here while you guys are chatting and buffering the conversation.
Yeah, Brian, tell us about why you exclusively use the Pulsar.
Exclusively. Well, first, it was the reason I think we don't know much about it is it just came out like last year.
There's been other. Isn't there a large box version of this, or is this? Oh, this is just it. I don't know.
Maybe like a micro. Nano is usually the smallest one. I mean,
I don't usually think of them as the first name in tremolo. I mean, they are the first name in analog delay as far as I'm concerned with the Memory Man, and I think the Pog is great.
The Pog,
they have some really cool stuff. But
I mean, like I threw it in the chat GPT just to kind of get some quick specs on it, and like
what
it has
does chat
stereo.
say?
Chat is saying it's a input 1/4-inch TRS. So you can do mono or stereo in.
All right.
2 outputs. Yeah, so it says
what's the
it's stereo
price point
out. There? It is
price point. I'm on page right now that's at $64.
$64. Okay,
dropped from $105.
Yeah,
so it's safe to say it might be hard to sell.
Yeah,
it's very much it's the nano pog size pedal. I mean, if you're listening, like it's small, depth, rate, wave, shape.
So it's a 1590 style. So kind of a phase 90 size box.
Yeah, it's small.
Stereo's cool though that they allow stereo on the on a pedal this size. But I mean, there's not too much to say. I don't think it doesn't pop out as being something that is world changing in the life of tremolo, or life changing in the world of tremolo. It's probably a better way to say it.
I think if you want to support them, Electro-Harmonix, support them with what they do best.
And I think for what they're doing at the price point, it's another one of those things that you could get, if you're learning or anything. It's a really good starter type of pedal until you really understand what you need, because it's all right there on the face. Like there's no dip switches, there's no extra bells and whistles. Like it's very straightforward.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's it.
I don't have experience with this one, so it's hard to say.
Yeah. Well, I do think that people have gotten a sense of where we sort of land on this article. I think for the most part, not bad picks here. We talked about some analog tremolos that I really like in the modded Boss TR2s, the Demeter Tremulator, the Diamond Tremolo, and then the Empress. If you got to go digital, the orange Empress one is great. Any final thoughts on tremolos before we move on to James Tyler?
No.
The only one I think I was telling you guys before we started recording that I was messing around with briefly yesterday was the Kinglsey one. Being a tube tremolo. That would probably need to be for someone that's a bit more serious about trem, because the Kinglsey stuff isn't cheap. It's very well built and sounds incredible. But one of the cool things, I think, even on this topic of stereo trem, is Simon was playing mono trem. The Bard is mono, but he had it on one side of his stereo chain.
Yeah.
And I was listening to him play, and I was like, "Oh, stereo trem! This is awesome!" And because there was movement happening between the two amps, and I was sitting dead center between two amps. I was like, no, it's a mono trem. I'm just running it on one amp. And I was looking at the amp, especially that didn't have trem. I was like, there's movement in that amp. Yeah. But sure enough, it's you can create a faux stereo sound with all sorts of effects. But in today, we're talking trem. And so I don't think the stereo tremolo thing, if that's all you're doing, is 100% necessary to get that feel.
Yeah.
But man, that Bard trem sounded awesome. Very musical, warm, articulate. It was impressive. It was very cool. Nice. So I think that could be, if you're really into it and want something a little bit different as far as construction and the approach, that tube trem was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's move on to some sad news. We did lose a titan of industry in the guitar world, which is the late great James Tyler, who also went by Jim Tyler, stage name. And man, if you're not familiar with Tyler guitars, they are kind of the Mount Rushmore of super strats. And as far as sort of early innovators in that space, you have brands like Valley Arts, which is kind of now defunct and didn't survive, past the 90s, or at least in its glory days. And you had, Anderson, which is still a great brand. You had Schecter, which has kind of taken some turns. I don't even think Dave Schecter's involved with Schecter now. Not to say that they don't make good guitars now, but it's just not the same thing. And then you had Jim Tyler as kind of one of those guys. In fact, I think that Jim and Tom Anderson both worked at Schecter in the early days. And when Schecter kind of went out of business for the first time, I think that they were both kind of using Schecter necks and bodies to kind of start some of their kind of super strat builds. I know that Jim used to work out of Norman's Rare Guitars as kind of the repairman. I think that's where he came into touch with Dan Huff, who had bought his famous 64 Strat that then Jim sort of modernized with, changing the radius and changing the frets and putting in the Floyd Rose and the Duncan hot stacks and the JB, humbucker bridge and all that stuff. He was a real innovator in this space, and unfortunately passed away recently. Had been in some long-term health battles, but has built some amazing instruments in his work with some studio greats from Michael Landau to Dean Parks and Dan Huff and many more. And in fact, they just released a Dan Huff signature instrument that replicates the exact guitar that James had modified for Dan from that 64 Strat that he bought at Norm's.
Nice.
So, man, it's a real bummer. And in fact, I was just there a couple weeks ago because I'm building a replica of that 64 Strat, using an actual 64 custom shop that I'm doing all of the exact stuff to, with the right pickups and all that stuff. And I really wasn't that anxious to try to make the Strat pickguard myself because of all of the wiring and switching for all the series and parallel switches and all that stuff. So Tyler agreed to do it for me, and just sold me the pickguard component. And so I was over there at their shop a couple of times in the last month. And I wasn't hanging out with James. I was hanging out with Rich Rankin, who manages the shop, and he was telling me that he's speaking with Jim on a regular basis and goes over to his place, and we always have this thought that guys are going to be there forever, and they're not, and he was certainly, I think, a huge innovator as it came to taking the Super Strat to another level, and in a lot of that 90s and 80s pop music that we know and love, a lot of that's recorded with either James Tyler modified guitars, whether we're talking about Michael Jackson or Celine Dion or Richard Marx or any of these guys where you would have heard Landau or Huff or Dean Parks. These were ubiquitously heard and really, really cool. And I should also, he also worked with the great the now defunct cartridge company, Andy Brower, one of the kind of the main dudes in the business who gave a bunch of people their start, including Dave Friedman, George Trips from Way Huge, Reinhold Bogner. These guys all work for that cartridge company, Andy Brower, which also Jim worked for, and kind of had their collective spaces kind of merged. So they were all working together back in the 80s as well. So a real bummer to see him go, and just wanted to remark that happened, and we lost a real leader in that regard. And so I don't know if you have any experience with Tyler guitars, in what he's done with people's instruments. So yeah, real bummer to lose him. And I think his legacy will live on through his amazing instruments and the new ownership. And it looks like his daughters are still involved. And I think Rich also being there and being kind of with Jim since the beginning, I think is ensuring the integrity of what it is that's going on there. So loss for all of us, and condolences to the Tyler family. But I'm glad that the guitars will continue.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we got to talk about Tremolos. We got to talk about a guitar legend. I think we did some good work today, and I hope that our listeners agree. And again, if you are enjoying the podcast, if you're enjoying the topics, the conversation, the bad jokes, the dad jokes, and everything in between, we highly recommend that you give us a review on iTunes or wherever it is that you find your podcast, or even if it's here on YouTube and you feel compelled to write us a review, go to iTunes, because that's kind of the place where I think all of the indexing as far as where podcasts are sort of ranked sort of comes from. We are still number one in Bangladesh, so shout out to all the people that are using IP addresses from there, whether you're from Bangladesh or not. And we will see you all next week.
All right.
See you guys.
See you guys.